So, hello. This is going to be a little taste of what we're doing next month, moving beyond posture. And the idea is rather than thinking about holding ourselves stiff as a post and upright, we're thinking about being able to move with grace and ease in any direction we choose. This lesson is going to be sitting down, and I just want to show you something that may make the lesson a little easier. Okay, so on this lesson, you're going to be sitting down, and what we're going to really focus on is this sits bone right here. Okay, so you can see this is the leg, and this is going up into the hip joint. This is the pelvis, and on the bottom of the pelvis, right, you have these two circular things. And at the bottom of the circular things is something called the ischial tuberosity. It's where some muscles insert. But we call this area the sit bone because when we're sitting down, we tend to sit on top of it. So it kind of makes sense with that name. And what we're going to do during this lesson is we're just going to explore shifting the weight on one sit bone, shifting the weight on the other sit bone, and then tilting the pelvis so we can feel a little bit. If I do this, I feel a little bit behind the sit bone. If I do this, I feel a little bit in front of the sit bone. So we're going to play with a variety of movements like that and see what kind of effect that will have on our acture, our ability to move and walk in any direction in a standing position. Okay, so everyone, please start by standing. And we're just going to start by taking a step in different directions, different ways, and just comparing and seeing if there is a difference between how we do it and if some ways of moving are easier than others. And our goal is by the end of class is to be able to make any one of these movements easier, smoother, more gracefully than we did in the beginning. So just notice if you step forward, what foot do you step forward with first? And just do that like 3 times. Notice the ease. Notice the timing. Good. And now step forward with the other foot and notice if something's different. Is there a little hesitation? Is the timing a little different? Is the ease and the comfort a little bit different? Do you feel a little bit more off balance? And step forward with one foot and then the other foot and compare the two. Do you have the same in ease and grace, stepping forward with one foot and then the other foot? Or is one foot a bit better? Is one foot more graceful than the other one? Okay, so come back to your starting position and then step to the side and you pick what side you want to step to. And just do that a couple of times, stepping to the side. Notice the ease and grace 2 to 3 times. And then step to the other side. Is it as easy? Do you step as far? Do you step as wide? Are you as balanced? And then to compare it directly, step once to one side and then once to the other side and really compare the two. Is one way a lot easier, a lot more available to you than the other way? Okay, and then just stand for a moment and step back with one foot. And just notice, did you pick the same foot to move all the time, or did you pick different feet when you step different ways? Did you always pick the same first foot, whether you were stepping forward to the side or back, or did you change feet? we have a tendency to like to stand on one leg more and move one foot more. That tends to be our habit. So it's just interesting to note if you were always moving the same foot or if you changed it up depending on what direction you were stepping in. Now, which way is the easiest for you? Is it easier stepping forward, or is it easier stepping to the side, or is it easier stepping backwards? Which way was the easiest? Which way was the hardest? Is like stepping backwards with the left leg the hardest, and maybe stepping forward with the right leg was the easiest? We'll compare these things at the end of class. Okay, this next part, be really careful with, because what you're going to do is walk around a little bit, but suddenly change your direction. And just notice you can change your direction, you can go backwards, or you could change directions and do sidestepping one direction or sidestepping the other. But how easy or is it difficult for you to change your direction as you walk? And is one side easier to change direction than the other side? Is one side more available to change direction than the other side? Does it feel like one foot's more coordinated and more grounded to enable you to change direction of how you're walking? Do it slowly, right? First rule of Feldenkrais, do no harm. So just kind of notice which directions are easiest for you, which directions are a little bit more difficult. And at the end of the lesson, we're going to see if maybe we can make all those directions much easier and much more graceful for you to do. So somebody's looking at their phone and just walking right at you and not noticing you're there, that you can change your direction real quickly and easily and avoid them. There's a lot of that going around these days. Phone head. Okay, wonderful. Now that we got all that done, we'll check on that at the end of class, but find your chair. And just find a comfortable way of sitting, a comfortable way of arranging your feet. And this is a interesting thing to do. I was doing this when I was preparing the lesson. Once I kind of got myself in a comfortable position, I just took a little peek down at my feet and I put my finger in my belly button and I just looked which foot was closer to my belly button, which foot was further away from my belly button. And it could be which foot was closer in terms of forward and backwards, which foot was closer in terms of the sideways in the midline. So you may notice that one foot you arrange a little bit differently than the other foot. And that has to do with our pattern. Don't change anything. Just notice how you are and where you are. And just notice how you feel your contact with your feet on the floor. What parts of the right foot are touching the floor, and compare that to what parts of your left foot are touching the floor. And you may feel that your feet are touching the floor a little bit differently. Again, which is part of our pattern and something pretty normal. After sensing the contact with your feet and how the feet were different, there's another area that we're contacting that's supporting us, and that's the chair on the bottom of our pelvis. So just feel how your weight is, how you feel your weight on the chair, and whether you feel a little bit more weight on one side than the other side. Maybe one side feels a little heavier than the other side. Okay, and then if you're looking at the computer screen where you can see yourself, you can put, or you can close your eyes. You can have one hand on your belly button, one hand on your nose, and see, or feel actually, because your eyes are closed, and just notice, are these two fingers aligned, or is one a little left to the right of the other one? And if you're not sure, you could sneak a peek on the camera. So it's going to be interesting to do that at the end of class to see if the lesson that we did made us a little bit more symmetrical. All right. Now we get started. So the first movement is to find if you shift your weight a little to one side or the other side, which side is easier to shift your weight to? Just a little bit, tiny bit, just so you feel a little bit more weight on that side. Find out for yourself which side is easier to shift the weight to. Now, if they both feel about the same, then you can just pick one. Okay. Do we have a side that we like? One side that feels a little easier? Great. So shift your weight to that side. Notice how your contact changes with the chair. Notice as you shift your weight to the side, what parts of the pelvis, what parts of that sit bone do you feel pressing? And then notice what you feel on the other side. Notice if that other side gets a little lighter or not. So notice what side gets a little heavier, what side gets a little bit lighter. And just go to the one side. We're just doing the one side now. Now here's another thing to pay attention to. As you shift to the side, do you feel like you're tilting to the side or do you feel like you're getting taller over that sit bone? And let's try it two ways. Okay, so I'm thinking about my nose, and the one way tilting to the side, I'm letting my nose go beyond my sit bone, and I'm coming back. Okay, so I'm really going over to this side. And it kind of feels like a tilting. You're kind of rolling to the side and back. Okay, so now this next way with your nose, find your nose over your sit bones and see if you can find the pressing of your sit bones so you feel your nose go up and your nose is directly over your sit bone and back. It's just a tiny little movement. You're going to notice, right? Because the sit bone's not that far from your center. So see if you can find that. Your nose is directly over the sit bone. Great. Now we're going to add something to it. Nose over the sit bone, then turn your head and look a little behind the shoulder, and then come back to the center. Shift the weight to the sit bone, slowly turn, look over the shoulder, and notice when you come back if you get shorter. As you shift the weight and turn, notice if you're getting a little taller. And as you come back, notice if you get shorter when you come back to the starting position. So we're finding support. We're finding support from the sit bones, and we can actually feel that upward support from the sit bone to our head. As we do the turning, and then as we come back and we find the weight on both sit bones, notice if you feel like you get a little shorter. Okay, just one more part of this. We're going to turn, look over the shoulder, and now let your weight go back onto the opposite sit bone and then shift your weight back. So it's a little rocking. You're rocking to the other sit bone and then you're rocking onto that sit bone that you're turned on. See if you can rock back and forth on your sit bones. There's going to be notice where you feel the bending. There's going to be a little bending in the ribs, a little movement in the hips, but turn. Do it, stay in the turn position as you lift and lower. There you go. Okay. Now come back to the center. Shift your weight a little to the sit bone that we've been working with. See if you can feel that upward lift from the sit bone to your head. Come back to center and then do the other one. And notice which sit bone you can really feel more supported with. Now, if you want to take a break, you can sit back, you can shake off the arms and legs. If you want to go for a walk, you can go for a walk and feel the difference between your two sides. Maybe one leg will feel a little bit more grounded. Maybe you'll feel a little taller as you stand and walk on one leg than the other leg. Or you can just rest in your chair. Up to you. You're the boss. We learn from differences. That's one of the major Feldenkrais principles. So it's nice to take little breaks in the lesson so you can feel the differences of the two legs as you walk. And maybe it's easier to find skeletal support in that one leg, a little bit easier than the other leg. Okay, have a seat in your chair. And let's see if we can do the other side. So the first thing, right, is just notice how you find this side, tilting the weight a little to this side, then coming back to the center, the starting position. Noticing when you find that sit bone. Now purposely overshoot it. And you'll notice when you find a sit bone, you get a little taller and your nose is right over it. And when you overshoot it, you fall off to the side. Now, this is important for walking because as we walk, if we can feel as we walk and our weight shifts into that leg, if we can feel the upper part of us shift in this way, it's going to be in line with the leg. So that's why it's nice to get this feeling of being able to shift our weight over and feel that sit bone because the hip is right next to the sit bone. Okay, so now that we got the feeling of this, once you find that sit bone, turn and then come back. And notice as you find the sit bone and turn, notice if you're getting a taller. Can you feel a little bit more height, a little like you rise a little bit as you turn and lift. And then you can feel you kind of shrink back down as you come to the center and sit on both sit bones. Good dancer knows that. When you turn somebody into dancer, that dancer will get really tall. Michelle could probably tell us what, I don't know if she ice skated pairs, but you know, when that person gets really tall over one leg, they're super easy to spin. Okay. Now the next part, right, is we turn and then we shift the weight to the other sit bone and shift it back. So we're kind of rocking back and forth in this turn position. And this, notice what your ribs have to do and your sides. One side's going to get longer, one side's going to get shorter, this, depending on how you're moving. So you're just kind of, you'll notice when you turn that one sit bone lifts. So how do you put that sit bone back to the chair and then how do you lift it up again? What do you need to do with the ribs? What do you need to do with the pelvis? Do it in the turn position. So turn to the direction you're turned in. And now in the turn position, lift and lower your pelvis. It's different. If you do it straight, it's something very different, right? We're after the sure, being able to do things in any direction. So now if you're turned diagonally, you're going to be able to create movement in that direction. If we just do something forward like this, we're limiting our planes of motion. So we're adding to our repertoire by putting this little movement in. Good. Come back to the center, shift your weight onto one sit bone and then the other one and see if it's feeling a little bit more even to shift the weight side to side. Notice if you're getting taller over the sit bone. Now notice, are you staying just a little, you're a little off center, right? What we don't want to do is we don't want to drift. So can you get taller, find a sit bone without drifting off to the side? Okay? I'm going to spotlight myself for a second because sometimes you need to cheat. Okay, this is finding my sit bones. And you notice I'm getting taller and I'm not going that far. If I'm doing this, I'm beyond my sit bone. Now I'm a little outside the sit bone. And you can see I'm tilted. You know, this, if I was doing judo with that old man, I would be on the floor before I knew it. If I was like this doing judo with the old man, I would have half a chance because I'm balanced here. So, find a sit bone where you feel like you get a little taller without going too far. That's going to help your walking. Great. Now that you guys have that idea, if you want to, if you feel like it, take a little walk and feel the difference now. We did both sides now. Notice if there's a difference. I see a nice difference. It's looking good. And we're only halfway through. Okay, find your way back to your chair. Okay, now hopefully you're feeling your weight more evenly on both sit bones. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to find when we're on top of the sit bones. So if you tilt your pelvis, well, if you tilt your pelvis a little backwards, and by a little backwards, what I mean, okay, here's the top of my pelvis. You can see my front of my pelvis is going up, the back of the pelvis is going down. And just notice how you roll off the top of your sit bone and you kind of curl and get shorter. And then as you come back, you can find your way on top of your sit bone. Okay, now the other way, for me, going back is easier. The other way is tilting forward. And you can see now my front fingers are moving, these index fingers moving downward. And what I can feel is my back arching. So go slowly. And if you go slowly from front to back, there's going to be a point where you're going to feel the tallest, where you're not going to feel like you're rounded and your head's forward, and you're not going to feel like your back's arched and your head's tilted up. You're going to feel like you're right on top of the sit bone. So you can do the little tilting and make it smaller and smaller so you feel like you're not forward, you're not backwards, you're right on top of the sit bone and you feel where you're the tallest. I'm going to show my head because as we do this movement, right, as I go forward, my head's up like this. and my head's tilted like that. So that's not really tallest. And if I go like this, then my head's kind of like that. So if I'm thinking about the middle of my head, right? Middle of head's shorter, middle of the head's shorter. But if I find where I'm right on top of the sit bone, the middle of my head's at its highest peak. So see if you can find that. Yeah, if you want, you could put your hand on top of your head. Sometimes that helps. You can feel it. You can feel that it goes forward and down when you tip a little too far backwards. And when you tip like a bucket, if the pelvis is a bucket and the water's pouring out the back, you can kind of feel it. The water's pouring out the back, the top of the head comes forward and down a little bit. And then if your pelvis is a bucket and the water pours out the front, you can feel the top of your head goes backwards and down. But someplace, if that bucket isn't tipping, the water's not spilling out either direction, you're going to feel your head at its highest point in the middle. So we're finding where when we're perched right on top of that sit bone evenly. And this is what they'll mean by good sitting posture. If you're sitting up on your sit bones in this way, where your skeleton is balanced evenly on top of your sits bones, theoretically, the less the muscles have to work to hold you up because your skeleton is doing a better job holding you up. So you're invited to try that. Personally, I forget and I go into my old habits again, which is okay because then I get uncomfortable and I have to get up and move, which isn't bad either, right? Okay. So we have the idea of being a little bit in front, a little bit behind, rolling over the sit bones this way. So what we're going to do on the first side that you chose, shift your weight into that sit bone and then tilt the pelvis. So you're just rolling a little in front of it and a little in back of it. We're just rolling over that sit bone front to back. You may feel your head like nods a little bit as you roll over it and behind it. Okay, and now shift your weight back to both. And then do the pelvic tilt again, right? The bucket pouring out the back, pouring out the front. And notice if you can feel the one sit bone a little bit more than the other one. If it's a little bit more wired into your brain, if you're more sensitive with that side in that sit bone, that's what we're looking for, this kinesthetic awareness so we can feel where we are and you can feel where your sit bone is on the chair. Okay, good. Let's do the other side. We're going to shift. And now we do that little, imagine the pelvis is a bucket, pours a little water out the back, pours a little water out the front, and then notice how the head responds to the bucket pouring the water out, the tilting of the head as we're rolling forward, backwards on the sit bones, and slowly make it less and less and less so you can find a place that's not forward and not backwards. And you can find that you're perched nicely on top of that sit bone, where you feel your whole skeleton just balance perfectly on top of that sit bone. And then come back. Slowly do the little tilting again, bucket pouring water out, back to front. And now notice if you can feel both these sit bones evenly. And if it's easier to feel when you're right on top of both. And when you find this area right on top of both, notice if both sit bones feel more even on the chair, that you don't feel like you have more weight on one side than you do on the other. Great. And then take yourself for a nice walk. This next part, we're going to really focus on quality of movement. And I had a wonderful discussion just a few days ago with Leora Gaster, and she's talking about her ideas for a training program they're putting together. And we talked about how circular movements are really valuable for us to help learn quality of movements. So what we're going to do, take this sit bone, the first sit bone that you shifted your weight to, and find that sit bone, and then make a tiny circle around the sit bone. And notice the quality of your circle. Where does it feel really round? And where does it just not feel as round? I'm noticing there's parts of my circle that are just fluid and flowing. Then there's other parts that are a little staccato and a little stuck. So if you have a place that's not quite as smooth, what you can do is you can just make that little arc in that place going back and forth to really help you feel it. And then you can go back to that circle and see if you can find a little bit better roundness. Good. And now make the circle in the other direction. Just a little circle around the sit bone, small, tiny circle. Good. Shift your weight back on both sit bones. Tilt your pelvis a little forward and backwards. See if there's a difference between the two sides. Shift your weight and turn to one side. Shift your weight and turn to the other side. Notice there's a little difference between both sides that way. Then what you can do is stand up, take a little walk around, feel the differences between the two sides and walking. Okay, now we're going to do the other side. So we find ourselves on top of that sit bone, and we're just imagining that sit bone is like the middle of a clock. And we're just going to make the tiniest circles so we can feel a little bit behind the sit bone, a little bit to the side, a little bit to the front, a little bit to the inside. And just notice, like if it was numbers of the clock, what numbers are clear, what numbers aren't quite so clear, and what direction do you go in? Do you go clockwise or counterclockwise? And if you find a little rough patch, you can go back and forth during those numbers, try to smooth it out a little bit. Really think about making a circle. And how can your ribs help? How can the ribs help? How can the shoulders help? You know, how can you use all of you to help make this tiny circle and then go in the other direction? Is this direction is smooth? If you need to, I'm noticing, because I'm doing this with y'all, I'm noticing I'm going too fast. And this other direction is not really a very good circle, so I'm going to slow it down. There we go. There I go. So yeah, don't be afraid to slow it down a little bit if you need to. Make sure you're breathing. That always helps. Jaws a little open. Okay, good. Find both sit bones again. And let's just do our little movements. What you can do is shift your weight on one sit bone, shift your weight on the other sit bones. Notice how that's different now. Can you find those sit bones easier? And then turn, look over one shoulder. Notice how you move both sit bones around, how one sit bone gets heavier on the chair, finds support. The other one can lift and turn a little bit. Notice how easy it is to roll behind the sit bones, to roll in front of the sit bones. And then take a look at your feet. You could put your hands on your belly button if you want, and just notice if maybe the feet are a little bit more symmetrical with your belly button than they were when we started. You can check your belly button and your nose. See if that's a little bit more symmetrical. All right. Now for the moment of truth, right? Does this stuff actually work standing up? That's the moment of truth. So let's see, take your time to come into a standing position. Just notice how you feel standing for a moment, how grounded you feel. How do you feel yourself over your hip joints? Maybe you feel more balanced. Maybe you feel the weight a little differently in your feet. Maybe your feet are a little more symmetrical than they were before. Okay, step forward with one foot and then step forward with the other foot. One and then the other. And see if they're both available, easily available. You can do either foot either way. You don't have to think about it. You can go with the left foot forward. You can go with the right foot forward. No problem. You don't have a favorite anymore. Either one's available. And a matter of fact, just to make life interesting, purposely inhibit yourself when you go to walk and purposely start walking on the other foot and see if you can do that for the rest of the day and maybe the next couple of days so you can kind of take advantage of it. Okay, now what you can do is just step to the side, step to one side, come back, and then step to the other side and see if that's evenly available. That either way, sidestepping's easy. Like the judo guy, you can go forward, you can go sideways, you can go backwards. You can move in any direction you want at any time you want without losing balance, without having to prepare yourself to do it. And then see what it's like to step backwards. Yeah, see if the other legs is easy to do. And then the big test, right, is when we take the show on the road, out into the real world. And, just walking around, can you change direction at will? Can you say, I want to go to the left. I want to go to the right. I feel like going backwards. I feel like moonwalking like Michael Jackson. Oh, maybe not go that far. I'm still working on it. That's a lot trickier than it looks. He makes it look so easy. When I finally have it down, I promise to do it for everyone. Everybody's looking really good. Everybody looks balanced, solid. Everything looks like it's working together in a nice, united way. So we hope to see you. We're going to be doing a lot more of this kind of stuff in February. So a lot to look forward to. Have a good day, everyone.